Okay. So my disclaimer that I kind of give with regards to ChatGPT and all the AI tools, and one of the big things, especially speaking to people who work in education and the research we're doing with it in education, is that a lot of people are worried that potentially the ramifications of it are negative to the education system, and to our own roles and to other areas. And the big thing that I've always wanted to make kind of present with the use of these tools is that it is a tool to support, and everything that I'm looking at tonight is really about how can we use it to help support what we do, mainly to eliminate some of the more tedious elements of our role, maybe help give us ideas, innovative ideas that will help support our practice moving forward, so that we can spend really a great amount of time doing the job that we love doing, which is teaching, working with students, giving them the care and the support they need, something that a machine can't do. So yes, I think, you know, some of the practicalities of these tools are absolutely fantastic, but I in no way see them as replacing the great service that we do as educators across all areas of the sector. The aim for tonight really is, last week I looked at all the fantastic benefits of it and stuff, and I do want to look at the science benefits of it tonight. I want to look at the mathematics. We had a few people ask about DT, so I'm going to be looking at some of the DT elements of it. And we look at things such as how it can support us with our writing, how it can support us with how we write using feedback tools. And also I want to show you some of the limitations and the strengths of it as well, because you'll see a lot of time all the fantastic things it does, but I also want to show how sometimes it is absolutely wrong and it kind of breaks. The intention with any of these tools is to see where the breaking point is, and I do want to kind of go over that, especially with the mathematics side, which it does have issues of not always being entirely accurate, which is a problem that isn't drummed up enough, but we need to be aware of it, and especially our students aware that this is a problem. So, as per normal, I will share my screen. Hopefully you will see it in a second. Fantastic. If you can see screen 2, that would be absolutely fantastic. You should just see ChatGPT on the screen. For those that haven't been on one of these online sessions in the past, the nature of how they work is kind of, I'll go through tools, I'll go through a few ideas, but I do have the chat window open. And if you have any questions or queries, or if you want to go, oh, but can it do this? Can I adjust that? Can I add this? Please drop a message in the chat box. I'll be more than happy to pause where I am and go over it. The other problem I always have as well is I do speak sometimes a bit too fast. So if you do want me to stop, go back over anything and kind of repeat it, I'll be more than happy to do that. So the aim tonight is to look at 2 of the leading tools that are now on the market, ChatGPT, and I also want to look at Google's version, which is Google Bard. So Google Bard, if you've not seen it before, go to googlebard.com, sign in with it. But what you have to do is you have to request a spot. So you request a place on Google Bard. So it's not as open access as ChatGPT is at the moment. You have to request it. And then when you've got a spot, when they give you rights to use it, they'll send you an email. But I want to show the 2 because I can see Google Bard becoming a lot bigger within the education realm, as opposed to something like ChatGPT, which is still a little bit on the fringe. Google has this hold on the education sector at the moment, and it is pumping a lot of money into it. So you can see that a lot more in the future. Okay, so let's get started. So one of the things that popped up last week was someone said, well, can I use it for DT sort of thing? So I wanted to start off by looking at some of the DT methods that we could use. And one of the things that came up that I've used it for a lot in the past is for things like helping to set up innovative classes and how to set up instructions and stuff. And what we can look at is firstly to think of our own limitations. Where are we limited? So if we start with ChatGPT straight away, let's say we're doing a food tech session. We're doing a food, what do you call it, food tech or home economics or something like that. But say we want to do a cookery class for students. Let's say, what recipe can I teach a group of 12-year-olds to make? So I could just start off with a real basic open question. It can give me a series of things. Now, what it will do straight away is it will go, right, you're going to make a homemade pizza. It'll give me the ingredients. It'll give me the instructions. And that's quite nice. Now, the one thing with anything like ChatGPT, and I say to it, is talk to it like it's a human. Start to really play around with it. Now, a pizza, well, they've had pizza, they've made it before. Not that interesting. Let's start to punch around with it. Now, because we're still on the same screen, we can stay on this conversation. We can stay probing it and start to kind of have a go at it and go, okay, I don't want to make a pizza. That's not something that we want to make. Dough's a little bit too, potentially a bit too difficult for them. Go, okay, well, we only have 2 red peppers, mozzarella, I don't know, beef mince, and plum tomatoes. What can I make with this? Again, you may want to start thinking about, especially if you've got dietary requirements or you've got other requests that you want to start thinking about. So now I've just given it this list and it goes, oh, you could make this instead. I was actually thinking of something different. Actually, I was thinking of, I don't know, maybe it was going to tell me to make a spaghetti bolognese or something like that. But now it said, well, no, you can make red peppers, mozzarella, beef mince, whatever they are. Stuffed bell peppers, there you go. So now it's given me my ingredients, it's given me my lovely instructions. And the great thing about this is it doesn't just give you the ingredients, it gives you the instructions, and we can start to play around with it a lot more. We've got these nice, clear instructions that we can start to utilize. But let's think about our own classroom and let's see, can we push it a bit more? Because we can start to think of limitations. Maybe I don't have an oven. So what we're going to do, while it's playing around with that, I'm now going to start, I want to make these bell pepper things, but I haven't got an oven. So how can I do this? Don't have an oven. And again, there we go. So we're starting to build on this based on the limitations that we are identifying. So now it knows that I don't have an oven, but I could do this instead. It's starting to adapt to the questions that we have here. So now it says pour enough water or broth into the skillet. So now it's telling me how to make it, but without the use of an oven. Okay, that's nice, fantastic. So we've got this activity. Let's start probing a little bit more with this one. So let's go, what activities could I do before cooking this to prepare learners? So now it's got this, we're building this lesson from this. So here we go. Here's some activities. Maybe we need to look at knife skills. Maybe we look at ingredient exploration about the smell, the touch. We could do a tasting session. They are cooking vocabulary game, food safety and hygiene, group roles. There we go. So we're starting very quickly in the space of about 5 minutes. We've got the product that we're going to make. We've got our ingredients to how to cook it. We've picked up on the limitations that we potentially have, and now we start to do this. Now, we've had a great question here. Will it create a risk assessment for this? Yeah, of course it will. So create a risk assessment in a table for cooking this meal. Now, I always put in a table because I like things neat in a table. I don't want a long list of things. So when you're putting instructions in, put it in like nice and clearly. There we go. So what it's done now is it's gone through and it's created my risk assessment for my cookery meal, got my activities. There we go. I've got my little risk assessment based on product that it is. So again, we've got the lesson, got the ingredients, got the instructions, those sorts of things. Now, the one thing I would say is when we look at the instructions, there's a lot of technical language in here. And maybe we need to adjust the language, or even better, let's say, turn the recipe instructions into, I don't know, simple terms. For learners. Now, there's a great thing which is called Explain Like I'm 5. I'm not sure if anyone has ever seen this before, but we can actually simplify language. So again, if you want to differentiate even just a language for it, you can make the language terms like maybe saute or anything like that at all, which they're unsure on. There we go. It makes it a little bit simpler. So very, very quickly, it's built that. Again, once it's done, turn the cooking and 2 of the activities. I've got a lot running tonight, so it's not into a lesson plan for a 3-hour lesson. Placed in a table. So based off my knowledge of the ingredients I had, again, you may want to pick ingredients that you know at the moment are cheap for students to purchase from a shop, and you may not know the idea based on the limitations of the classroom, but you still want them to engage with it. Maybe some extension activities. There we go. We've now got my lesson plan that I've made there. And it will do this all for us very automatically. Now, the key thing here, and this is what I go back to my kind of little disclaimer at the start, is that as the teacher, this means now you have that time to prepare material, to maybe create some cue cards, to maybe make some activities. And it's, you know, in the space of now we're up to about 7 minutes, we've got our activity, our lesson plan put together. Again, we could do this to link to the UK National Curriculum Standards for Key Stage. I put Key Stage for just making stuff up here. So again, if you want to add more to it, you're keeping that conversation going. And this is again the benefit of doing this. I'm going to close that window down there and that window there, see if it speeds it up a little bit for us. So it is having a little bit of a moment. The one thing with using something like ChatGPT is it's a bit of a RAM killer after a while. So now this is a great thing. Again, I'm really glad it's brought this up because it will actually show us a little bit of some of the issues with it. Now, sometimes with something like ChatGPT is it will try to generate web links for you. Now, what it does, and it's very interesting with this, and this is something to be careful to be aware of with students when they're researching, they're trying to find websites. If I open this link, a lot of the time it will sometimes take us directly to a document, but sometimes it just tries to make a website that it thinks is correct. But in this case, quite nicely, it's told us actually go and make that website for us. I'm actually going to push it again. I'm going to say, well, actually, no, try again, see if it can do it for me. No, it's going to refuse to do it. But we can still push it to do this for us. So just from a simple idea, from a DT Food one, we can do that, and it's quite nice and easy and it's clear. And you can do this for anything. I've made this for, I wanted to make, not sure if anyone made catapults. You know, how can I make catapults in a classroom? And it gave me full instructions of how to do it, and I generated a lesson from that. it's all about that simplicity, and it's all about that telling of a story and building on that story as we go through. So those that are going down the kind of DT route, that's a nice way to do it. It's also quite good for at home if you're unsure what to cook for dinner tonight. Just put your ingredients you've got in the cupboard. And I was telling Beth I used it to make a cake the other night, and it was rather interesting. So AI cakes, they're all right, they're not bad. Okay. So the next thing I want to look at is from the science point of view. Now, there are many things in science I don't know, and I've been trying to get in better with this. Now, let's say, for example, you're teaching a lesson on the Hadron Collider. Some of you may know what the Hadron Collider is, but I can put into this, what is the Hadron Collider? I can even put really poor grammar in. There we go. Right. So what it's given me straight away is this really big chunk of text, this Wikipedia-esque definition of a Hadron Collider. Now, I understand some of this. I know what a tunnel is, but I don't really know too much about the others. Now, the great thing again with this is that we can start to simplify it, especially for specific ages. So let's say, explain the Hadron Collider as if I was talking to a, I don't know, 5-year-old. Lovely. There we go. And then again, we may start to think, especially if maybe we're kind of having to understand something, and we're trying to build it from here. So I've got this idea of what the Hadron Collider is. Now I've got this nice, simple explanation. Think about it from a lesson point of view. You've got to teach what the Hadron Collider is. How can I teach the Hadron Collider? I don't know. How would I do this? What is a fun, practical way to teach about the Hadron Collider? Helps if I spell it correctly. Now, again, very much like with the food tech one, it's going to do exactly the same thing again. This one is telling me about particle collision bowling using a 10-pin bowling set. Now, I'm going to identify limitations here. Do not have a 10-pin bowling set. How can I do this, but in a safer manner? Now, you already may have a way in your head that you can modify it, but there we go. It's made me a simpler way to understand how the Hadron Collider works with instructions and simple materials. So I'm going to teach the Hadron Collider to my 5-year-olds using empty plastic water bottles and some small soft balls or lightweight objects or stuffed animals. Taking that scientific approach, giving me the understanding, giving me a small activity to help understand sometimes more complex terminology. So how can I do this but with a group of 16-year-olds? So let's now think about that differentiation. So maybe I look at this and go, okay, that's a bit too simple. Can I make it a little bit more advanced for our students? Well, yes, we can do that. So I've asked it, can it take it and make it a little bit more elaborate? Still under the knowledge that I don't have a 10-pin bowling set. And that's because I've kept within the story. Right now, it's really thinking about it. And more than likely, with the length of time it's taken to think, it's probably going to crash and come back and go, I have no idea. Go on, have a think about it. There we go. So what it's done is it's replaced soft animal toys with bean bags or hacky sacks. Now, remember, this is an American tool. Whether you have a hacky sack at home, I'm not sure. I think we just have those bean bags, don't we? But we can use this for lots of different things. It doesn't just have to be for that. We can think about practical activities. What's a fun way to teach about fireworks in the classroom? There we go. It's given us some activities, but I could build from this. I can go, okay, so I want them to make something. It's all about the questions that we build from it. And again, this is where you as the innovator and the creator of these sessions, you can really start to play around with these and you can start to develop them on them. I've been playing with this one. It told me how to make fireworks in a jam jar. Not sure if any of you guys have made fireworks in a jam jar, but it does work for that sort of setting. So it is a great little tool to use there. So from a science point of view, it's great for building sessions or helping you to explain or helping to simplify core elements. Again, the key thing that we can do with this is save on that administration time. Turn the above into a PowerPoint slideshow. And this is something that a lot of people don't think about. Okay, so I've got that. Yeah, someone's put fireworks storm in a jar are great. Fireworks storm in a jar. There we go. So it can't create my PowerPoint slides directly, but it can make my slides for me. And that's quite nice. So it's giving me what should be on each slide, how it looks. And again, that's all linked to the activity, the lesson I've planned, and that's quite nice. Now, what I could do is create speaker notes, go for each slide of this presentation. Again, it's the questions that we're asking. So now what it hopefully should do, there we go. And now it's made my presentation and it's given me speaker notes to help me prepare for that. And there may be certain slides where I go, okay, well, I want some further details for this. I may go fireworks safety. Oh, write me 50 words as to the nature of fireworks safety or the issues of it. There we go. Again, build on this with our research. What news story could I use to warn people about the dangers of fireworks? Now, something like that, it could be easily found on something like Google, but maybe we want to tailor this question here. So maybe we've got, what news story could I use about the dangers of fireworks? Well, actually, that's suitable. Don't really want to have some horrific story. I want to think about a story that may be suitable. Now, what it will start to do then is it will start to tailor it. Building our lesson here, this is what we could do. There we go. Now, what it's done here is it's not found one specifically, but it's made one. And this is one of the limitations that I do want to bring, because I said tonight I want to look at some of the limitations of it. What is real and what is fake. This news story here, there we go, is a fake news story. Okay, it's not a real news story. It has made this up based on the question that I've created there. Now, if I wanted it to find a real one, I'd have to find a real news story that helps warn people about this one here. It's made up. So this is where we have to be careful with something like ChatGPT as to what's real and what's fake. And sometimes it does this with research. So you have to be careful about that. But there we go. From our basic science activity, we can really build on this. Okay, excellent. Any questions at all with regards to its role in science or DT at all, or anything that you go, but can it do this? Or what about this? Is there any sort of elements about that? If you've got any questions about those, please pop them in the chat box and I'll be happy to answer. Okay, so the next element I want to look at, and it's one of the things that has caused a little bit of controversy with it, and that's the mathematics element. And this is where I want to show the two different tools and how it's useful. Let's start with a new conversation here. Now, from a mathematics point of view, AI tools to support maths have been around for a long time. Wolfram Alpha, for those that are aware of it, has already been there. There's also one that's been on Microsoft OneNote for quite a while, which we did a session a few years ago about the use of. But you're finding now a lot more people are using ChatGPT for the mathematics element. From a simple, I'm going to start with simple mathematics. I'm going to build up and then I'll show the limitations. So let's say, for example, I want to solve 23 minus 15. I can put a simple one like that in for you. There you go. Still do that for me. Now let's say I want to take that methodology, what we're teaching, the size of the numbers, the type of the numbers, and the number of calculations, and I want to make simple worksheets. So to create a worksheet using the question above as an example, build on. So what it's done now is it's thought about the questions that I've given. It's thought about the numbers, the style, it'll keep it around about the same sort of thing. And it's made this nice little worksheet for me. That's great, but create a worksheet with questions above and the answers. Because I do want the answers because I'm not going to sit there and work them out. There we go. So now it's made my worksheet. Again, I can just copy, I can paste that onto a Word document. I've got that, that's quite nice for me. So something like a simple mathematics like that, that's quite nice and that's quite easy and that does work through. But let's say we want to take it up to a next level of mathematics. Now, there are certain things it can't do. Geometry, it doesn't have a great time. It doesn't create images. So it won't create a graph here. If I said create a 2x plus y equals 7 graph, it will tell me how to do it. And it will try to plot it. And it will kind of look like that. Okay. So it will create that for you, but it's nothing that you can like submit or kind of put in, but it will give you a rough idea as to what that is. Now, someone's put a great question. Will it put it into a worksheet with squared paper to write the numbers into, please? So it won't do that, but what it will do so let's ask that question. It's a really good question, thank you. Using the subtraction worksheet from above, put into the table with spaces, put the answer in. Now, what it will do in that case is it will put it like this. So let's say, for example, it does create that. I can copy that code. Let's say I go to a Word document. And again, it's about finding those limitations for it. And I can paste it in, but it puts it like that. Now, what you may want to do is you can just take the straight Word one, then put it into a table yourself, but that's what it looks like when you put it in. But again, you've got to do a little bit of the work. Just a tiny bit of the work for you. So we've got That's what it does with line graphs. Don't look the most fantastic thing in the world, but it will kind of give you some ideas to solve it. Now, let's look at it from another point of view. How would I solve x if 3x plus 5 equals, I'm just going to put random numbers in. Okay. So let's take a little bit more of a step up. Now, the one thing it does do, which I do quite like about this, is how it helps give these nice, simple, clear instructions. And this is what I would say to our students to think about, is how they can use it. Now, they can put it in, they can solve it this way, but we've got to start thinking about, if that's going to be used, how else can we use it? So as a student, I'd be saying to them, okay, that's great, but you ain't going to have this in the exam, by the way. So how can you use this tool? So using the example above, create 5 questions for me to solve. The key thing is to put there without the answers, because for some reason, if you just put that like that, it is keen to tell you what the answers are as well. And again, it's that thing of going, well, if students are going to be using this, how can we build it on it? There you go, and they can do that. So maybe they solve it on a piece of paper. They put what are the answers for above? And it's that conversation. They can keep doing this. So from a mathematics point of view, they can go for there. But we can start to, again, talk for this, and we can start to build on it. We can think about how can we make this a little bit more interesting. So using the questions above, turn them into short stories in which the theme is, somebody quickly type in the box a theme. Let's think of a random theme. The more random a theme, the better, if that's okay, if you've got a really interesting theme. It's where everyone starts to rush in. Slugs, brilliant. Slugs got there first. I'm sorry, Harry, sorry, Chelsea. Slugs came in first. Theme is about slugs. We'll do Harry Potter next. Okay, so now we're doing about algebra. And there we go. So what it's done now is it's written me a story about the slug's journey to the garden party. There we go. It's a little bit different. I think they're a bit rubbish, and you can also give them a little bit of grief and go, yeah, but I don't want the answer on there. Now, in this case here, I'm particularly not that interested in this, because what they've done is they've just put a story in there about a slug, and then randomly he notices some equations to solve. But we want to use this in a practical sense. So using the formula 3x minus 4 equals 10, turn this into a practical word problem about slugs journey. So we can start to develop this. Okay. So there you go. So if you do want to make it a little bit more interesting, you can do. It has solved it for me, which I didn't really want it to do, but there we go. Now, let's start to try and find some of the problems with this. So to look at some of the problems with this, what I will do is I'm going to look at Google Bard. So Google Bard is Google's version of this. Two very different engines, still do very much the same practical element of it, but there are both strengths and weaknesses in both of them, and it is quite interesting for this. If I ask it the same question, so what I'll do is I'll go back in, I'll take the same question. There we go. Let's just copy that. Oops, spell correctly. Now, the one thing I do like about Google Bard is it does have the microphone, which is different from ChatGPT. So if I want to speak into it, I can speak into it. It will do that for me. It's taken the same sort of question, but what it's done here is it's made the word problem a little bit better. So now our slug is traveling from its home in the garden to a compost pile. The slug can travel 3 inches per hour. The compost pile is 10 inches away. How long will it take? It's now giving us a little bit more information. It's starting to play a little bit more with it. Now, let's say, for example, let's pick maths and let's try and break it a little bit more. Now, one of the things that I always used to be dreadful at school was simultaneous equations. So when I started kind of using this for maths and started thinking about how can I use it for maths, the first thing that came to mind was simultaneous equations and trigonometry, which we'll come to. So I'm going to give it a problem. I'm going to give both of them a problem, and I'm going to show where it could go wrong. So let's say I want to solve the simultaneous equation. Again, helps if I can spell it correctly. And let's go 3x plus 2y is 14, and 2x minus y equals 6. Okay. So I'm going to give ChatGPT this question here. Now, what it will do is it will tell me different ways that I can solve it. Okay. And it'll give me a set of answers for this one, which is quite nice. Okay. Now, let's give the same question to Google Bard, which is Google's version of it. So I've given it exactly the same question. The one thing I like about the Google one, I think it does look a little bit clearer. But you'll see straight away how the answers it's given between the two are very different. Why it does this, not sure. It's still a evolving machine. And this is the key thing for us to be aware of and to make our students aware of with regards to it, is that, yes, it's fantastic, it's AI, and you'll hear lots of people talk about how wonderful it is, but it still has huge amounts of holes in it. So as soon as you start to get to more complicated mathematics elements, the two machines are just coming up to completely two different ways of solving it. In fact, that there is a different answer to the one I had before. I've had 5 or 6 different answers. In fact, actually, if I go regenerate response, I wonder if I'll get a completely different answer again. And it will try and solve it. So for our students' point of view, if they're trying to use this, there we go. Now it's given us as 1.43. Completely different answer yet again. In fact, if I regenerate it again, it might try and give us a completely different answer. The key thing we've got to say with students who are wanting to use this is to not trust it to give you the correct answer. In fact, look at it to help give you instructions on how to process it. There we go. It's a different answer again. This is the key thing I found with it. I kind of got sad the other day on my, I started making notes, and I was starting to make some questions for myself, and I was trying to solve it. And I was using this purely for those step-by-steps. And the great thing with students is they can say, I got this answer. Where did I go wrong? What step did I get wrong on this one here? Again, this is very much the same. Let me start again. With Google Bard's version of it, is when it comes to something like trigonometry, it does have a bit of a moment between the two of it. We have a triangle of 3 centimeters, 4 centimeters, and 7 centimeters. What are the internal angles? So what it will do is it will go through the absolute processes of it. It will help explain it, how to work it out, and it will give me this answer. So again, we've got these 3 answers here. Let's take the same question. Let's put it into ChatGPT. Now, what you will notice is it gives a completely different process for how to solve it. And it does have a moment, especially if it's not the kind of right answer. So this one here gives you a definitive answer. This one here, as you see, will say, well, no, it won't work because it doesn't work. Now, it doesn't present information in graphs. And again, this is someone's just put a really great question here is, can it present information in graphs? It can't create graphs. You know, even with Google Bard, if I said create a graph that shows 3x plus 4 equals 8. So if we want to set it, sorry, in that one there, it won't kind of put it together, but it will tell us roughly how to do it or anything like that at all. And again, this is those limitations of it. So it creates something like this. And the tables, do the tables you create there transfer over and paste? No, they use exactly the same system here on Google Bard. You can get it to write the code in HTML. Yeah, again, you can turn that into HTML code and take it that way. Again, we're thinking about the practicalities for our students and how they're going to use it. So it does become a little bit complicated, and we've got to think about the user that's going to be kind of taking this forward. It does have its strengths, but at the same time, make sure our learners are aware not to rely on it too heavily for solving everything, because it does have problems between the two. So from a mathematics sense, it can help create these quick worksheets. It can create some quick revision tools for learners. We can use it to adjust, and we can use it to make different bits and pieces. But at the same time, it's really important for our students to be aware of these potential limitations between the two. Any other questions at all about the use of... Oh, so someone's just put a really great question, which is, what advice do you have regarding learner use of AI? We're experiencing issues at the moment. The key thing I've always said about the use of AI in the classroom really is kind of thinking about, one, I always say about how do we assess learners? And a lot of the time, if students are able to replicate a piece of work using AI technology, then maybe we need to start thinking about how do we assess the process of it. It's something we've looked at from a HE level, which is, okay, so maybe we need to start using more like presentations or Vivas, discussions, things where they have to present physically the answers, or they have to express it in their own words. I think that's the key thing I always say with reflection and open dialogue. How can we get them to do it and not prove it? The other way to also, and I think I said this last week with a few, if you see a piece of work and you're unsure about it, pop it in and say, was this created by a piece of AI? What evidence do you have for this being created by a piece of AI? But it's something that I think a lot of institutions, now that we're aware of something like ChatGPT and Bard and things like that, we start got to think about, well, how do we assess? And I think it's going to be good in a way, because we're going to move away from this didactic rote approach to learning, and instead we're going to come up with, we're going to have to think about more creative and innovative methods that will help learners progress really. You know, the one thing we'll find with this mathematics one, and we need to make learners aware, is that it's great, you can get your homework done this way, but when you come to an exam, you're going to really struggle, and it's that realization that I haven't got this tool to guide me when I'm there. So the next step I do want to look at is looking at how we can use AI to help with our writing. Now, for some of you, I know for myself, there are lots of services that have been out there for a long time, like Hemingway, or even a physical person like Fiverr, for helping with writing. And sometimes we do need assistance with our writing, and our students can get assistance with writing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show how we use this. I'm going to take a piece of writing that I've done recently, and let's say, for example, I've written this chunk here. Let's take a little bit. Let's take that. Fantastic. Okay, so I've taken this piece of text here and I've written this, and I want to get a bit of support with this one. So what I can do here is I can go, give me feedback on the writing about the grammar and structure. So what I've done here is I've taken a bit of text that I've put in, and I can ask it to give me specific feedback. And this is really useful for me, and anyone who's doing any large amounts of writing at the moment, when you start to get in the flow of it, you can start to ignore what's going on, or you're bugging your supervisor or assessor constantly. So what I've done here is I've put this large amount of text in. It's given me some specific feedback. How can I change it? Any grammatical errors? Anything that I can limit? And this is, again, another one of the benefits of it, especially if you're writing something like a funding bid or anything like that at all. So how can we use it in other senses? So using the text provided, how can I summarize this into 150 words? Again, you'll find a lot of time if you're writing, especially like a funding bid or anything like that at all, and you've got loads and loads of words on the page, but then you go, oh no, I've got to limit it to a certain amount. This is a really great tool for helping to shape what we do and how we put it together, and to kind of go, it's picked the key elements. There we've got a large amount of text, and it's put it into a very simple, clear moment for me. Now we can use this as well for when we're looking to how we construct feedback. Now this sounds like I'm being lazy with it, but sometimes it's about how we use this kind of work here. So using the text provided, give feedback that identifies 2 learning goals and 1 great element. So again, same chunk of text. Now what it's done is it's picked up some things that I need to do from it and some really strengths from it, but I don't really like what it's put there. Mark the text provided and give feedback to the student about the quality of the writing. Now, maybe my instructions weren't that clear there. What it's trying to do is it's trying to kind of give it specific feedback. So I've got to be a little bit more exact with that. Give feedback on this work as if we're marking it for a student. There we go again. Now it's giving me feedback as if I was a student. If we were to do this, is there a danger that your own writing could be checked and now found guilty of using AI? Where it becomes an issue, and this is the key thing here, and the one thing I make sure I don't do is it's when I get it to write it for me. And I think there's a massive difference here. A lot of time when I'll use it is for identifying mistakes that I have made. So, for example, one of the things it's picked up here is it's put, oh, helpful to provide the full names and title. So I just put UCAS there. Now, I know that earlier on I've referenced what university and college admissions is, but maybe I hadn't. I go, oh yeah, I haven't done that. So I'm using it more like a spell checker and a grammar checker, which you see with Grammarly, Hemingway, which are tools that have been out for a while. Here, there's a sentence that isn't really that clear, and I could go back and I could look at. The problem with AI, and what a lot of people have to be careful of, is when they do this. Okay, this is the one thing that we have to be careful of. Write 250 words on dangerous stress on teachers in the UK. Now, what this has done is it's created this 250 words here. Now that is where we have a significant problem, and it's something. And this is where it goes back to the question earlier of the problems of it, is how do we get rid of this? So there's two things you can do with this one here. So I could just copy this. Let's put it into another one. What's the following text created by AI? So you can put it into another one and get it to look at it. Yes, the text you provided was created by AI. I'm a large language model known as conversational. I'm trained. So there you go. So I can check it that way there because it's created this. So what we've got to be aware of is, especially if we're looking at students who are using it, is, maybe, they don't have to do academic referencing, but this is where I say, well, think about maybe they've got to write about how does it impact them? What are the examples where the real person has to be in there? So again, if you want to check whether AI was used, you can just put it into an AI model, and that's picked up very quickly that that was a piece of AI generated text. How I've used it is really about going somewhere, okay, maybe I need to adjust that, maybe I need to change that. Okay, I can shorten that, but I'm still doing the work behind it, and that's a key thing there. So from a text point of view, very nice and clear, and it's quite a simple thing to do there for it. So let's kind of get a new one up here. So what else can we do? It sometimes the one thing that I do like about it is how it can change tone and bits and pieces when we are writing, and sometimes we do need to check the tone of our writing. So if I pick, let's take a chunk of the text I've done. Let me just try and find the scariest piece. I try to find something that just sounds a bit horrific. Okay. Okay, so I've picked this piece of text here specifically because it talks about increase of mental health. So say, for example, I want to change the tone of something. Change the tone of this writing to be more positive. Be more positive. And we can do this with a lot of things. Sometimes if we're giving feedback and we know that we've been particularly harsh on how we written it, we may want to look at how do we adjust our text to make it sound not as horrific. We can use it in this way to adjust tone. Again, pick out maybe some key words that could be useful. It's about helping to structure and save our work on this and save our time. So that's a quite nice element. Again, the same could be done on Google Bard. Okay. If there are any questions about the writing element of it, please drop a message in the chat box. I'd be more than happy to show that. Okay. Now, one of the things that I am doing with this is I am building my kind of like AI library of tools that I found that I think are quite good. Could it create language in a comic strip format? Oh, yeah, okay, let's have a quick look at that. That's a really great question. Last week we looked at turning it into a Friends episode, but could we take a piece of my work and make it into an episode of comic strip format? Yeah, I'm sure we can. We can do that. I'll wait for it to load back up, and then we'll go for that. But while that's loading up, I'll just open this up. Now, one of the things I am going to share with you for tonight is I am starting to create a directory of different tools that are out there that I find that are quite useful, especially within education. So I'll share my library with you that I've got so far. But before we break for today, I will kind of go through one of the tools that I have used, which I found quite useful for several different things. More than likely it'll ask me to log in. Now this is questionaid.com. There we go. Now questionaid.com is a tool that is available online. And what it does is once you chunk a load of text into it, it will create a series of questions for you. Now that sounds pretty basic, but it's the next step really that it does, and I quite like. So let's say, for example, what I am going to do is I'm going to just take over here. I'm going to take a news article. So if I take a news article here, so I've just taken one off the internet. There we go. Again, you may want to take something from a Wikipedia page or something. So I've taken a news article about Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp, and I'm going to ask it to generate 10 questions for me. Now, what this tool will do is it will read through the text, and it will start to create for me very quickly these questions based on that text, like a comprehension sort of question for me. It's going through them. Very, very nice. It's the next two steps I particularly like about this. While it's doing that, what I will do is I will just put my in the chat box. If you do want to save it, it's up to you. It's the link to this Padlet page here, in which as I go through, I'll add more and more bits and pieces on that you may want to use. So as you can see, what it's doing right now is it's created, based off the article I've put in and the text I've put in, it's put in a series of questions for me. Okay, now I can add questions manually if I want to add a manual question in, or I can just put questions in. So if I go to each of these, what I can do is I can click on the question. And the great thing about this then is I can go, okay, I can either add answer manually or I can generate false answers. And what it'll do is it'll look at the nature of the question. So you already can see, it knows that Jurgen Klopp is a football manager. It also knows that Pep Guardiola, Jose Mourinho, Carlo Ancelotti. So it's not just made up like John Smith, Peter Smith, or anything like that at all. It's made me this automatic quiz. You know, how much was he fined? There we go. So this is a very quick way of making a quiz based off a news article or a piece of text that we found. If we want to make it multiple choice, we can have that. There we go. And it's going to make these answers up for me. There we go. Now, the next step that I really like about this is when you come to export it. So when I come to export it, the great thing it does here is it gives me these lots of different options. I can either embed it into my Moodle, so it will create it as an automatic Moodle quiz. I can download it straight to Kahoot. So if I've made a quiz, it'll put it onto Kahoot with my multiple choice, or it'll make it into a worksheet or as a text document. So if I make it as a digital worksheet, so if I click that, that's in German, so actually it's probably easier if I just make it into text. There we go. It's now turned it into a text file, which I can then copy and paste into a Word document. Really good if you've got a large chunk of text. I can copy and paste that into a Word document, and it's quite a nice little feature for that. So one of my top tools I have found on there is questionaid.com. It's that one there. It's a really nice way of auto-generating, connecting to Moodle, Kahoot, and lots of other bits and pieces in the future. Thank you for coming along tonight. Sorry if it's been another whistle-stop tour through some of the things, but hopefully the limitations and the strengths of it have been beneficial for you. And hopefully in the future we'll have some other sessions looking at some of the productivity issues that we can, productivity benefits that we can use for it to help support our jobs. So thank you so much for coming along tonight, guys. Thank you. I'm also now going to turn this into a Welsh comic strip. There you go. I've tried to sign up to ChatGPT. This my email is not supported. What browser are you using, Chelsea? That's the first question I'd state. I've not tried it on Safari, but it might be worth seeing whether it has a problem with that. It shouldn't do. Yeah, it does have an issue with Safari. So what might be worth doing is looking at downloading. Yeah, try a different browser. That's the first thing I would normally kind of go to see whether a different browser will work with that. Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys.